Encounter cards are units from past eras that have been adapted to the new standard format. They have stone borders and a clan box. Many of these units have received upgraded forms in the past, such as Dragonic Overlord with Dragonic Overlord the End, and Phantom Blaster Dragon with Phantom Blaster Overlord. With this, we can speculate on what upgraded forms might come out for the current encounter cards we have. These forms are called Cross Rides, introduced in the 5th ever booster set, Awakening of Twin Blades. Cross Rides are upgraded forms of units ridden on top of their original forms. One way to tell if a unit is a cross ride before is it has an ability that grants a permanent additional 2000 power to the unit if the original form is in Soul. Encounter cards' abilities are always based on the previous version, so we can take a look at what the potential skills of the new versions would be. First card we have is Melstrom. We can first compare the original version to the standard version before looking at their cross rides, so we can see how the abilities transition to standard. So for the original version, Limit Break 4, this ability is only active if you have 4 or more damage on attack. If it's the 4th battle or more, it gets +5, and CB1, when the attack hits, you draw a card and you retire 1. So in the D version, they had to remove the cost and the limit break to make the card adapt to the format. And then the first ability of the D version, it's entirely new, but it's based on how the clan plays. Melstrom can have 2 forms, but this is the more likely one. Blue Storm Supreme Dragon Glory Melstrom. One of the coolest dragon arts for me, with the blue, pink, and violet. Limit break 5, so it's only active if you have 5 or more damage. CB1, on attack, it gets +5 and your opponent cannot call grade 1 or greater units from his or her hand. So if this does go to standard, it's probably not gonna have only this skill. It's probably gonna have more, obviously, but the main thing here is the guard restrict, so no PGs. And the second card that can come up but is less likely is Blue Storm Karma Dragon Maelstrom Reverse. Limit break for CB1, choose one of your rear guards and rest it, unlock it. On attack, if it's the 4th battle or more, it gets +5 and a crit, and at the end of the battle, it attacked. If the attack did not hit, you draw 1 and choose one of your opponent's rear guards and retire it. The big thing here is just the crit. It's really, since the end of battle skill is similar to the original and standard Melstrom. Going to the next card we have is Luquier. You might have noticed that we're starting from the earlier sets in standard. Melstrom and Luquier are from DBT 8. So the original version, Limit Break 4, CB3, choose up to 1 grade 0, 1, 2, and 3 unit from your soul and call them to separate rears. And on the second skill, when your Pale Moon unit is placed on rear from soul, it gets +3. So in the standard version, it uses only CB1 because CB3 is too big for today. And put a card from your hand into soul, and you can choose up to 3 units with different grades from your soul. So you can only call 3 units now instead of 4, but it's more flexible. And you can call them, and if your opponent's vanguard is grade 3 or greater, those called units get +5. So the power up skill is combined with the first skill now. And it has a grade 3 restriction because +5. At that time in set 8, that might have been too big if there was no grade 3 restriction. And at the end of your turn, put 2 rear guards into soul and draw cards. So that's like a skill from Dorian. For her cross ride form, we have 2. The first one is more likely Silverthorn Dragon Empress Venus Luquier. So this art looks sick with the nice colors, the pinkish one and the white. Limit break 4, CB2 cards with Silverthorn in its card name. You get to soul charge 2, and you can call up to 5 cards with the sum of their grades being 6 or less from your soul. And this ability cannot be used for the rest of the turn. So you can get up to +5 and you get 2 soul. I mean, obviously I think they'll add more to this skill if it ever comes to D. Maybe she can multi-attack on her own instead of relying on the order, or maybe they can add the units that can multi-attack as well. Then if they do decide to add reverse units, you can have Silverthorn Dragon Queen Luquir reverse. Limit break 4, CB1. You lock one of your rear guards, and you can call a Pale Moon card from your soul and call it to rear, and it gets +5. Next up, we have is Dragonic Overlord. So I just decided to sneak this in since I decided to add reverse units. So you might already know what I will be showing you guys. So Dragonic Overlord CB3, and it gets +5, and when it attack hits, you stand it. So in the standard version, the battle it attacks a rear guard cannot be guarded from hand. The second skill is also taken from the original version. On attack, CB1, discard a card from your hand, and you can stand it. But instead of losing Twin Drive, it gets -1 drive only, and the cost is reduced to CB1, but you have to discard a card from your hand. So this one is from the earlier days of D, so it's really tamed DBT2. Then the end, the art of the end, is so iconic. I remember just seeing this in the anime, one of the coolest cards I've ever seen, even to this day. So it has the Crush Ride skill, and then CB2, and I think this is one of the first Cross Ride units together with Overlord, Phantom Blaster Overlord. CB2, choose a card named Dragonic Overlord, the end from your hand, and discard it. And when this attack hits, you can stand it. You have to discard the same name as it, and it's CB2. But for the standard version, if it has Overlord in so, it gets +5. And his drive checks cannot be reduced. And at the end of the battle attack, CB1, discard 2 cards from your hand and stand it, and it gets -1 drive. So the unit that can be added to standard if they decided to add reverse units is Dragonic Overlord the Rebirth. So limit break 4, CB1, lock 1 or more of your Kagura rear guards. If the number of lock cards you have is 5 or more, it gets +10, and you discard 2 Kagura cards from your hand, and at the end of the battle that this unit attack a Vanguard, it stands. Locking 5 units, that means you only your Vanguard will be able to attack, so they probably do something more if this ever comes out in standard. Next one we have is Incandescent Lion Blonde Asel. So for the original form, limit break 4, CB2, check the top card of your deck, and you can call it to an open rear. If not, you put it on the bottom of your deck. You put it in the bottom of your deck and increase these units by the original power of the unit called with this effect. And it gets +1000 for each of your Gold Paladin rear guards. For the standard version, it says you can only ride cards with Asel, so the superior ride mechanic won't be abused by other units. At the beginning of the ride phase, if you have 3 or less units, Soul Blast 1, check top 3 and call up to 1 grade 3 or less card from among them. So the call from your deck, from the top cards of your deck, is from the original version, but now you have 3, you can check top 3, because CB2 and limit break 4 is too much. On attack, on a grade 3 or greater Vanguard, CB1, check top 7 and call up to 2 cards from among them. And this gets +10, so the power is now fixed. So the power up is fixed, and it has multi-attack now. Asel has 3 more cross-ride versions, but I'll only be showing you the main one since the 2 cross-ride versions are from 0 and V. So the main one is Blazing Lion Platina Asel. Limit break 5, CB3, and 5 of your Gold Paladin rear guards get +5. So it's just a power boost. So if this does ever come out, I think it's gonna have a big power boost to your rear guards. But obviously, it has to do something more because of the standard format. Next card we have is Dragonic Kaiser Vermilion. So same set as Asel in D, DBT11. The original one, CB3, it gets +2 and battles every unit in your opponent's front in 1 attack. For the current Vermilion, CB1, choose 2 units with only Narukami for their clan. They get +5, and at the end of turn, when it attacks, you can choose 2 of your opponent's rear guards, and it battles all of those units. So instead of just the front row, you can choose, which is nice. And at the end of the battle, it attacked. If you play the normal order this turn, your opponent's damage zone has 4 or less cards. Discard a card from your hand and choose one of your opponent's vanguards and deal 1 damage. And his cross ride is Dragonic Kaiser Vermilion the Blood. So this card is sick, man. It's really hard to beat the previous arts, or I don't know if it's just nostalgia. Limit break 5, CB3. It gets +5 in a crit and battles all of your opponent's front row in one attack. So the big difference is it gets a crit. If it does go to standard, it's probably gonna have crit and do something more like all the other cards. The next card we have, I actually didn't know that it had a cross ride, but I only found out through research. Top Idol Pacifica. So the original one, during your turn, if you have 4 or more guards, it gets +3. At beginning of main phase, Soul Charge 1, draw a card, choose a card from your hand and put it on the bottom of your deck. And Mega Blast, Soul Blast 8, CB5. When the attack hits a Vanguard, you can search your deck for up to 3 units and call them to rear guard. And Top Idol Pacifica in standard, CB1, put a card on the bottom of the deck and draw 2. So you still have the choosing a card from your hand and putting it in the bottom of your deck. And on attack, CB1 Soul Blast 1 card with Pacifica in its card name, search your deck for up to 1 normal unit, call it to an open rare. So the second skill is more tamed since it doesn't have the insane cost of the original version. And her cross ride is Eternal Idol Pacifica. Limit break 4. When this unit attacks a Vanguard, you may pay the cost. If you do, choose up to 2 of your Bermuda Triangle rear guards, return them to your hand, and you can call 1 card from your deck. So now it has a bounce mechanic, which will really help you keep the units you need, and you can search 1. And the skill cost is not as big as the original version. Next up is somewhat of a bonus one. It has just been confirmed in standard for DivineZ set 3, Super Dimensional Robo Dausa. So one of my favorite units before, just because of the art, the colors, and the aesthetic of Dimension Police. But back then I wasn't able to build decks easily or get decks. And back then I settled with Zeal because it was cheaper. But anyways, at the beginning of your attack step, if this unit's power is 14,000 or greater, this gets a crit. One of the key traits of Dimension Police is reaching a specific amount of power at the attack step and it's able to activate an ability. So this one is just a crit because this was back in PT3. It has 2 potential cross rides. First one is more likely, Ultimate Dimensional Robo Great Dausa. So 5 sets later, limit break 4. If the number of cards in your soul with Dimensional Robo and its card name is 3 or more, this gets +2 and a crit. And so it's just easier to get the crit. The other one is Dark Dimensional Robo Reverse Dausa. Limit break 4, CB1, choose 2 of your rear guards with Dimensional Robo in its card name, lock them, and your opponent's Vanguard get -10. So his main thing is reducing the power of your opponent's Vanguard, like Zeal. The last one on the list is a stretch. I was deciding whether or not I add this to the list. So Angelica's cross ride is Minerva in the original version. So original version, limit break 4, soul blast 3. When this unit is rolled upon, you may pay the cost. If you do, draw 2 cards and choose your Vanguard and it gets +10. And on attack, soul charge 1, it gets +1. But in standard, Angelica is a rear guard because her main Vanguard is Minerva, which was her cross ride. But she has another cross ride that isn't not as famous as the other units that's in this list. We have Brynhilder, limit break 5, CB4, soul blast 6, and choose up to 3 of your opponent's rear guards, retire them, and draw a card for each unit retired. Almost a Mega Blast, CB4, soul blast 6, and limit break 5. So ultimate break. And if you have a card with, and her second skill shows that if you have a Regalia of Wisdom Angelica in your soul, it gets +2. So this is another version, but I think out of all the units in this list, this is the least likely to come out. That's the list. You can tell me your thoughts. You can tell me if I missed anything, or you can also comment what encounter cards you'd like to see come out in DivineZ, or which of these units are you most excited for. So that's all for this video. Thank you for watching.